Hello, everybody. This is Jim Wickens from nfldraftfanatics.com. And this podcast and video will be a demonstration of fanatic mode for the Kansas City Chiefs. So fanatic mode is a way to ensure a mock draft is unique. Okay. So if you flip the setting on, it guarantees the mock draft will be unique. And I'll explain a little bit more detail in a little bit. If you are not familiar with the NFL Draft Fanatics mock draft simulator, I'm going to start by giving a demonstration of team needs. So I'm going to open up the team needs, and we're going to specifically look at the Kansas City Chiefs. And I will explain how the simulator works at a very, very high and simple level. So we'll scroll, we'll find Kansas City. It lists their team needs, and on the far right, there's a player board. So I'm going to hit the player list button over here to the right. And this is the player board for Kansas City. There's 32 teams, and there are 32 player boards. Okay. No two teams will have the same player board. And when you do a mock draft for the Kansas City Chiefs, it is going to change this player board. Okay. So you can see by looking at this list that people have been doing a lot of Kansas City mock drafts. Like, I haven't looked at this in a little bit, and I'm mildly humored. There's tight ends and wide receivers and one offensive tackle in the top 8 of their board. Okay. And basically what happens is whenever the simulator has to pick for Kansas City, it's looking at this player board, and it is going to pick the top player on this board that's available and assign them to Kansas City. So the fans have control over what this board is simply by doing mock drafts. So let's go back to the simulator. We're going to do a 4-round mock. We're going to do Kansas City. And this is a demonstration of fanatic mode right here. So I'm going to flip fanatic mode on. It defaults to 2. I'm setting it to 5. I'm saying I want to do 5 mock drafts, 4 rounds each. And because fanatic mode is on, those 5 mocks are guaranteed to be different. So can you come up with 5 completely different Kansas City mock drafts that would meet fan approval? That is not as easy as it sounds. So we will get it done. We're going to start. And the first mock is usually the easiest of the 5. Okay. We'll have access to whatever players are available at the time Kansas City picks. Okay. So if you look here, a mock draft was done. And for the most part, the picks looked okay. I did notice Houston took a linebacker, which surprised me. I haven't seen Houston take a linebacker in round 1 before. But that tells me that there's a fan that's using the simulator if Jeremiah Trotter went in the first round to Houston. So a fan is the one that put that there. Okay. So this is the board as it looks for the Chiefs. And okay, so here's the board. And Troy Franklin is currently 21st on the Chiefs player board. I think they would take Troy Franklin over those 4 receivers. And if you don't agree with me, tweet me at NFL Draft Fanatic and tell me how wrong I am. But I like Troy Franklin over the 4 receivers that were above him. So that's who I picked. Okay, so the Chiefs' other needs would be offensive tackle, defensive tackle. So let's look at the line. So if Kingsley fell to the Chiefs in round 2, would they take him? I would say yes. And notice he's at the top of their player board. I am not the first one to do a mock draft for Kansas City. I think the player, it would either be, I think, between Kingsley and Jordan Morgan. Now, granted, all 4 of those players, though, I really like for Kansas City, but I'm going to take the number 1 player on their board. Right? I'm not going to try to argue with the masses. But there's a reason that player was at the top of their 2nd round board. He had been picked there by Chiefs fans more than once. So at this point, I would need to go defensive line, guard. Defensive line, guard. And Mahogany is 94th on their board. I'm okay with that. I see Landon Jackson here in round 3. So I'm actually going to go Landon Jackson. Okay, so now it's going into round 4. I'm assuming Kansas City has a pick in every round. I didn't check the draft order before I started the podcast. So here's a Kansas City round 4 pick. At this point, we've gone wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive line. We've hit the top 3 needs. So at this point, it's quarterback, wide receiver, defensive back. So quarterback, wide receiver, defensive back. So would the Chiefs take Thrash over the rest of those players? And I think they would. A double dip at wide receiver, but Thrash in round 4, like, I thought that would be a really good pick. Okay, so we're back to round 1, and I'm waiting for the Kansas City pick. Notice that Troy Franklin, who I picked in round 1 last time, is gone before Kansas City's pick. So the whole premise of Fanatic mode is uniqueness. Okay, we're doing this to get a unique mock draft experience. More than likely, that means that Trotter's available. Like if I look at the linebacker list, Trotter's available because he was the player that went to the Texans right before. Okay, so if they can't pick Troy Franklin, who do they pick? Like what positions would they focus on? Is there an offensive tackle or a defensive lineman that we like in round 1? And I'm looking at this list. Would you do Jordan Morgan in round 1? That type of thinking. Do you like any of those players in round 1 at the other positions of need? So I definitely don't like those. So let's look at that wide receiver list again. And I'm going to say Brian Thomas, round 1. He is currently 6th on the draft card. Okay. Now, again, Chiefs fans have got their defensive linemen going to the top of the draft card. I'm not going to sit here and disagree with them. It's a position of need, so I'm taking the top player on the draft card. Now, if I take the top player on the draft card, the player board isn't going to move much. So I've done that twice now. I need to make sure that I also show other aspects. So Jack Nelson, round 3. And then what running backs are available in round 4, so I'll pick Marks. Okay, so this mock draft, I'm going to try to be a little bit more unique to show the player boards moving. But I'm going to try to not disrupt too much of what Kansas City fans have set up on their draft card. So let's say they'll take Cooper DeJean in round 1. He's currently 44th on their draft card. And I'm taking DeJean in round 1. Could play safety, could play corner, could play slot corner. So he has some position versatility. But I picked a player that was 44th in round 1. He's going to move really close to the top. Okay. And I will pick a different player in round 2. Round 3. And I'm going to get different again when it comes time to go round 1 again. Round 1 again. I'm going to go different. Okay, so here would be an observation. So if you notice, Kansas City has a kicker that's 97th on their draft card. I can guarantee you there was no kicker in the top 100 of the player board that was loaded. So the only way that that kicker got there is that a Kansas City fan picked it. Okay, that's how the kicker got there. Okay. So at this point, I'll scroll down. I'll find somebody. That player board, like I can tell Kansas City fans have been using this. Like I'm actually impressed with the draft card. Pretty much set up for the positions of need for Kansas City is generally who I see on the draft card. Okay, so we're back to round one. Now, in round one, let's talk about edges. Now, this is going to be a reach. I don't think this player is going to go this high, but I'm going to go with Adisa Isaac. He's currently 174th on their draft card. I'm going to take him in round one. He's probably going to go from 174 into their top 10. Just with me making that one first round pick, he's going to jump to the top of the board. Okay. And then what wide receivers are there in round two? I like Polk in round two. Polk is 103 at the time that I picked him. And then round three, we need an offensive tackle. So this is the fourth of 5 unique mock drafts that I said I was going to do when I turned on Fanatic mode. I just made the last pick of that fourth mock. So now we're beginning the last mock draft that I said I was going to do. And again, it will not let me pick any of the players that I picked in the first 4 mocks. Will be completely off the board. The simulator won't even display them to the user. So at this point, I'm going to go Adonai Mitchell, who is 14th on their draft card, in round 1 to the Chiefs. Okay, so, and at this point, I'll finish it out. Not going to do anything too crazy. This draft board looked like it had been set up really well. So if you're a Kansas City fan and you're using the simulator, thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me. If you are the fanatic that set that board up, let me know who you are. I'm highly impressed with the Kansas City player board right now. So I'm sorry if my one pick of Isaac like threw a wrench into the board, but the rest of this board looked quite well. Okay, so we've done 5 consecutive unique mock drafts for the Chiefs. We're going to go back to team needs right here. And we're going to go look up each of the players that I picked. Okay, and we're not going to look up every single one of them, but we're going to look up most of the first round picks. So I'm going to scroll down to Kansas City. Okay, their player list is over here on the right. I'm going to click the player list. And let's look up Franklin. Franklin was not the top receiver at the time that I picked, and he's now 8th. So if you want to look at the whole draft card for the Chiefs, okay, so Neighbors and O'Dunn's, it makes sense that they would be higher. But at this point, Franklin moved into the top 8. I don't remember where he was beginning. Also notice Cooper DeJean, which is somebody who I picked in round 1. DeJean, I think, was like 22 at the time I picked him. He's all the way up to 9. So you can see I picked DeJean here. Okay. He was 22 at the time I picked him. He moved up to 9. So if you see Cooper DeJean mock drafted to the Chiefs, I was the one that just did that. So if you do a mock for any other team and it put DeJean to the Chiefs, that was a result of what I just did here. If we look at Isaac, who was like 117, he moved up to 22 on the Chiefs board. Polk didn't move up much. Donnie Mitchell went up to 7th. So the player boards move at nfldraftfanatics.com. The round 1 picks will pretty much move the moment you pick them. Whereas players you're picking rounds 2, 3, 4, you'll have to pick them more than once. The basic logic that you should use is this. How many second-round picks would you have to trade to make a first-round pick? The answer to that is about 7. And it might be 15, depending on where you are in the round and what trade chart you're using. So on this simulator, you'll have to pick somebody at least 7 times in round 2 for them to start to inch up the round 2 board. Okay? It's even worse in round 3, right? How many third-round picks would you have to trade to get a first? The answer to that is about 20 to 40. So you'd have to pick somebody in round 3 about 40 times to get them to go to the top of the round 3 board. Okay? So the basic idea behind that is we want to give fans control over the first and the second round. And then having that much control in rounds 1 and 2 is actually going to make rounds 3 through 7 significantly more random than any other mock draft simulator out there. Okay? So when you get to like a round 4, round 5, round 6 board, what you see each time you log in here is usually quite different, just based upon fans changing who a team takes in round 1. Okay. So my name is Jim Wickens. You can find me on Twitter or X at NFL Draft Fanatic. There's no I in Fanatic on my Twitter. So find me. If you try a Chiefs mock draft, tag me in it. If you take the time to tag me, I will always take the time to respond. Okay. The fundamental nature of nfldraftfanatics.com is 32 teams, 32 player boards. We're not trying to be like everybody else. We want to give fans control of who is mock drafted to their teams based upon the mock draft behavior of that fan base. So I welcome you trying a mock draft. We just demonstrated Fanatic mode, which is down here at the bottom. And we had to flip that on. And the purpose of Fanatic mode is to give you unique mock drafts. We talked about the player boards a little bit. There's other podcast content on the YouTube channel, which includes who are the top 100 at every position group. So what offensive linemen are in the top 100? What wide receivers are in the top 100? And different analysts will come onto our podcast channel and give their opinions. This is a simulator designed for people with varying opinions. We're not trying to say that the player board is this or the player board is that. We are trying to let fans decide we would draft this player at this spot. We want the fan opinions to be what determine the player boards, as opposed to some default big board on the site. So I appreciate everybody who has listened and watched for the last 20 minutes. Please try a mock draft on the simulator. If you have any questions, please find me on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. You know I am Fanatic. My name is Jim. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great evening.